occasion, as is exemplified by the number of people we've got attending and the distinguished galaxy of speakers who I'll introduce in a moment. I'm your chair for this evening. My name is Eric Avebury. I'm vice chair of the Parliamentary Human Rights Group, and I have a long-standing interest in the affairs of Iran. I wrote 2 booklets in the 1990s on the program of assassinations that was conducted by the Iranian regime, including that of Dr. Sharafkandi, and a pamphlet also on the so-called chain murders which were committed against many opponents of the regime domestically. So I have a long-standing interest in this affair, and I have great pleasure in introducing our first speaker, who is an old friend of mine, and I'm delighted to see him with us this evening. He has spoken on previous occasions in the Palace of Westminster, and we very warmly welcome him here this evening. Dr. Abdullah Hassan Zadeh, who is the leader of the Kurdish Democratic Party of Iran, and of course he is the successor of Dr. Sadegh Sharafkandi. He's been active in the Kurdish political scene for something like 50 years, and so I share that with him because I've been a member of one or other of the Houses of Parliament for 50 years myself. So he has a very long-standing record of distinguished service to the Kurdish people, and I have great pleasure in asking him to address us now.
خوشکو برا برازەکان وەک هاوخەباتێکی شەهیدانی میکۆنوس پڕ بەدڵ سوپاسان دەکەم کە بۆ 20 من ساڵوەگەڕی تێرۆری دکتۆر سادغی شەرەفکەندی و هاوڕێکانی فەتاحی عەبدولی و مایونی ئەردەڵان و نوریدێ کوردی لێرە لە ماڵ و لوەردەکانی بریتانیا کۆبوونەوە. سوپاسێکی تایبەتیشم بۆ دۆستی گەورە و لە مێژینەی حیزبی دموکرات و نەتەوەی کورد بەڕێز ئێریک لۆرد ئێبری کە ئەمڕۆ و ڕەسمە بە کۆمەگ و دەست پێشخەری بەڕێزیان ڕێکخراوە. 20 ساڵ پێش ئێستا لە ئێوارەی ڕۆژی 7 سپتامبری 1992 دا دەستی تاوان لە خۆڵی کاربەرستانی کوماری ئیسلامی ئێران هاتە دەرو لە ڕێستورانی میکۆنوسی شاری بێرلینی ئەڵمان دکتۆر سادغی شەرەفکەندی و 3 کەس لە هاوسەنگەرەکانی شەهید کرد. ئەمە زەبرێکی بەژان بووکەوە پەیکەری حیزبی دموکرات و بزوتنەوەی ڕزگاری خوازانەی کوردی ئێران و بزوتنەوەی دموکراسی خوازی لە سەرانسەری ئێراندا کەوت. سەختی ئەو کارە ساتە کاتێک باشتر دەردەکەوێت کە لە بیرمان بێ هەمووی 3 ساڵ پێشتر ڕێبەری بە توانای حیزبی دموکرات و کەسایەتی هەڵکەوتووی کورد دکتۆر قاسملووش هەر بەدەهۆ و پیلانی ئەم ڕێژیمە تۆڕۆر کرابوو. ئامانجی کوماری ئیسلامی لە تیرۆری ئەو ڕێبەرانە بە چۆکداهێنانی بزوتنەوەی حەقخوازانەی خەڵکی کوردستان و لاوازکردنی بزوتنەوەی ئازادی خوازانە لە هەموو ئێراندا بوو. بەڵام بەخۆشیەوە ئەو ئامانجە دژی ئینسانیە وەدی نەهات، چونکە دوای تیرۆری دکتۆر قاسملوو دکتۆر شەرەفکەندی بە لێوەشاوەیی جێگای گرتەوە و پاش تیرۆری دکتۆر شەرەفکەندیش قوتابیانی ئەو دوو ڕێبەرە ڕێگای ئەوانیان دەرزێ پێدا. تاوانی دکتۆر شەرەفکەندی و هاوڕەکانی کەوا کەوتنە بەر ڕقی کۆنەپەرستانی سەرانی کۆماری ئیسلامی هەر ئەوە بوو کە هەوڵان دەدا ئازادی و دموکراسی لە ئێراندا بەرقەرار بێ، مافی مرۆڤ بپارێزرێ و مافی نەتەوایەتی گەلانی زۆر لێکراوی ئێران کە بەشێکی گرنگ لە دموکراسی و مافی مرۆڤ بەدابین بکرێت. 20 ساڵ دوای کارەساتی برلێن و 23 ساڵ پاش تیرۆری دکتۆر قاسملوو لە ڤیان، ئەگە ئەو ڕێبەرە بەتوانایانە لەدەستچوون حیزبەکەیان و گەلەکەیان و ئامانجەکەیان هەروە بەرقەرارن و بەداخەوە کوماری ئیسلامیش هەر لە جێگەی خۆیەتی. ئەمڕۆ ئەگە کوماری ئیسلامی لە سەرانسەری ئێراندا دەستی داوەتە سەرکوتی ئازادی خوازان، لەم بەشەدا بەشی شێری بۆ کوردەکان داناوە. کوردەکانی ئێران نەک هەر بەردەوام لەژێر هەرەشەی ڕاونان و زیندان و ئەزیێت و ئازار و تەنانەت ئیعدامدان، بەڵکو دەکرێت بڵین بە شێوەیەکی ڕۆژانەش ڕۆڵەکانیان بە تایبەتی لە ناوچە سنووریەکان دەکەونە بەردەستڕێژی چەکدارەکانی ڕژیم و جانیان لەدەستدەن. جێگای سەرنجە کە دەگەڵ ئەوەی کوردەکان کەمتر لە 15 حەشیمەتی ئێران پێکدێنن لە گرتن و ڕاونان و کوشتر و بڕدا بەشی هەرە زۆریان بەردەکەوێ و زۆر جاروا دەبێ کە لە سەدا هەشتای ئەوانەی بە تۆمەتی سیاسی ئەعدام دەکرێن لە کوردەکانن. زیندانەکانیش هەمیشە لە چیژولاوانی کورد بە تایبەتی ڕووناکبیران و ڕۆژنامەنووسانی کورد جمەیان دێن. تەنانەت پارێزەرانی مافی مرۆڤیش لە کوردستان لە گرتن و ڕاونان و ئەشکەنجە و ئازاری کوماری ئیسلامی لە ئەماندا نین. هەر ئێستا سەرۆکی ڕێکخراوی مافی مرۆڤی کوردستان بەڕێز محەممەد ستیقی کە بوودوەن تەنیا لەسەر دیفاع لە مافی مرۆڤ 5 ساڵە لە زینداندایە و حکمی 11 ساڵ حەبسی بەسەردا سەپاوە. و دەگەڵ ئەوەی کە بۆ خۆی بەدەست نەخۆشی جۆراوجۆرەوە دەناڵێنێ و کوڕەکەشی تۆشی نەخۆشیێکی سەخت هاتووە ڕێگای پێنادرێ بۆ چارەسەری خۆی و چاوەدێری جگەرگۆشەکەی لە مەرەخەسی کە لە قانونی ڕژیمیشدا پێشبینی کراوە کە لە گوێر بگرێ. دۆستانی بەڕێز، کۆماری ئیسلامی ئێران ئەگەر لە سەرەتای هاتن سەرکاریدا بۆ دنیای دەرەوە نەناسراو بوو بە خۆشیەوەی ئێستێ بۆ هەمووان ناسراوە کە وایە ئازادی خوازانی ئێران حەقیانە چاوەڕوان بن کە بیرۆڕای گشتی جیهانی و مرۆڤایەتی پێشکەوتو و تەنانەت دەوڵەتە بڕیار بەدەستەکانیش کۆمەک بکەن تا خەباتی دموکراسی خوازانەی گەلانی ئێران بەسەرکەوتن بگا. مەبەست لەو کۆمەک و پشتیوانیە ئەوە نییە کە دنیای دەرەوە تۆپ و تانک و فرۆکە بە هاواری ئازادی خوازانی کوردستان و ئێرانەوە بنێرن. ئەوان زۆر باز دەزانن کە ڕزگارکردنی ئێران لە دیکتاتۆری و سەرڕەوی و دواکەوتویی ئەرچی سەرشانی خۆیانە. بەڵام لە ئەنگرانی ئازادی و دموکراسی و مافی مرۆڤ لە جیهاندا دەتوانن بە لەقاودانی جینایەتەکانی کۆماری ئیسلامی و بە هاودەردی نیشاندان دەگەڵ خەباتی ئازادی خوازانەی گەلانی ئێران کۆمەجێکی گەورە بەو خەباتە ڕەوایە بکەن. دەوڵەتەکانیش هەر بەوە کە کۆمەجی سیاسی فەنی خۆیان بە ڕژیمی ئێستا ئێران لەو دەسەڵاتە جەهەنەمێ ببڕن دەتوانن پاڵپشتێکی بەهێز بۆ خەباتی ڕزگاری خوازانەی گەلانی ئێران بن. واقعیت ئەوەیە کە کۆماری ئیسلامی بە کەلیگوەرگرتن لە یارمەتە تەکنیکی و تەسلیحاتیەکانی دنیای دەرەوەیە کە بۆ تایاغێکی نێونەتەوەی و ئەمڕۆ لە ڕادەی جیهانیدا هەڕەشە لە ئاشتی و ئاسایش و دامەزراوی دەکات. ئەزمموی چەند ساڵی ڕابردوو نیشانی داوە کە گۆماروی ئابووری زیاتر لەوە کە یارمەتی بەڕووخان و لە مەیدان دەرچوونی کۆماری ئیسلامی بکە دەبێت تەمایی تێکچوونی ژیان و گوزەرانی کۆمەڵانی خەڵک کە وایە تەنیا گەمارویەکی سیاسی و دیپلۆماسی یەکدەنگ و یەکگرتوویە کە دەتوانێت ئەو ڕژیمە ناچار بەڕووخان یا هەر نەبێ پاشەکشەیەکی جددی لە سەرکوتی ئازادی خوازان لە نێو خۆدا و ئاژەوەژێری و تێرۆریزم و هەوڵی دەستڕاگەیشتن بە سەرکی ئەتۆمی لە بەرامبەر دنیای دەرەوەدا بکە. لەبارەی کوردەکانیشەوە بەجێ بگوترێ کە نەکە دەوڵەتانی حاکم بەسەر کوردستاندا بەڵکو بەشێک لە دەسەڵاتە گەورەکانی جیهانیش غەدرێکی مێژویان لە نەتەوەی کورد کردووە کە هەم خۆی و هەم نیشتیمانەکەیان دوو جار بەبێ پرس و ئیرادەی ئەو نەتەوەیەدا بەش کردووە. 2 ساڵی دیکە 500 ساڵی تەواو بەسەر یەکەم دابەشکردنی کوردستان لە شەڕی چاڵدراندا 1514 تێدەپەڕن. بەڕاست وەختی ئەوە نەهاتووە کە بە کۆمەجی مرۆڤایەتی پێشکەوتوو کۆڕ و کۆمەڵە جیهانیەکان ئەو غەدرە مێژوویە لەسەر نەتەوەی کورد لا بچێ و وەک گەورەترین نەتەوەی بێدەوڵەت لە جیهاندا کۆمەک بگرێت کە چارەنووسی خۆی بەدەستەوە بگرێ. سوپاس بۆ هەمووی ئێوە بەڕێزان کە بە حەوسەرەوە گوێتان لە قسەکانم یا بە جۆریشی دیکە بڵێم دەردیڕڵەکانم ڕاگرت. زۆر سوپاستان دەکەم.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed attendees, I deeply appreciate the opportunity you have all bestowed to me here today, especially the Honourable Lord Avebury, a dear and long-lasting friend of the Kurds, for arranging this memorial in your House of Lords. Why we're here today, September the 17th of all days? Because 20 years ago, on the evening of this day in 1992, a historic assassination occurred at a small restaurant in Berlin, Germany, called Mykonos. The Secretary General of Kurdistan Democratic Party, Dr. Sadegh Sharafkandi, and 3 of his closest colleagues within our leadership died that night. This is one of the most prominent losses for Kurdistan Democratic Party and Kurdish freedom-seeking movements, and the struggle for democracy in Iran. As the findings of the subsequent 4-year trial proved, proved in the end the crime had in fact been ordered by the highest leadership of the Iranian regime. These men were targeted by Tehran because they were fighting on behalf of freedom and democracy in Iran, and on behalf of human rights, not only for the Kurds, but all oppressed nationalities within the country who are neither recognised nor respected. 20 years since the assassination of our General Secretary, Dr. Sharafkandi, in Berlin, and 20 years since the murder of his producer, Dr. Hassan in Vienna, also by the agents of the Iranian regime. I'm proud to report that despite these grave losses, the Kurdistan Democratic Party and the comrades of Sharafkandi and Hassan are still here today, still here standing and continuing their struggle, just as their fallen leaders would have wished them to. On the grounds inside Iran, the tragedy continues. The regime is still oppressing any and all critical voices widely, and the Kurds are the ones paying the highest price and suffering most. We are subjected not only to suppression, imprisonment, torture, exile, and persecution, but also we are sought and murdered covertly by the Iranian security forces. It's noteworthy that though the Kurds represent 15% of the Iranian population, looking at the various human rights reports, almost 80% of the political activists imprisoned, executed, or on a death row in Iran are Kurds. The lives of Kurdish human rights activists are seriously threatened at the moment. The founder of the Human Rights Organization of Kurdistan, Sadegh is in prison, and he has been sentenced to 10.5 years, only for defending the human rights in Kurdistan and documenting the violation of human rights in the region. He has not only been deprived of receiving proper medical care, despite reportedly suffering from serious health problems such as stroke and a heart attack, but also his request for visiting his son, who has had cancer, has been rejected. In other words, he has been denied the rights that he is entitled according to the Iranian laws and constitution. If the true nature of Iran's regime was a mystery to the world community back in 1979, when Ayatollah Khomeini first rose to power, it ought not to be a mystery any longer. Iranian freedom-seeking activists accept the international community, progressive international institutions, and powerful governments all over the world to support their struggle for democracy. By asking for international support, we do not expect or request for troops in Iran or Kurdistan, but to support the Kurdish and Iranian activist efforts to reveal the crimes that the regime is committing against Iranian people, not only inside Iran, but also outside of Iran, as it has against our leadership in Vienna, Berlin, Paris, and so many other places. We expect the powerful government in Europe to clearly show that they are committed to defending human rights and for prioritising human rights over economic transactions with Tehran. European governments need to stop providing the Iranian regime with political and technological support. This can be a significant message to the Iranian people that the international community is watching and is on their side. The fact that the Iranian regime utilises the technical and artillery support provided by the international community and has become a great threat to the global peace and security is undeniable. The past experiences have demonstrated that the economic sanctions against Iran has not been successful in making the Iranian regime to change its behaviour. Instead, it has affected Iranian people's lives conditions seriously. To make Iran observe international conventions, the most powerful and influential policy to be adopted is a unified and harmonic political sanction against Iran. This measure can be effective enough to force Iran to stop persecuting political activists and suppression inside Iran and supporting terrorism internationally or pursuing nuclear adventures. When it comes to the Kurdish nation, it needs to be mentioned that not only the countries that govern various parts of Kurdistan, but also some of the powerful governments in Europe has betrayed Kurds 2 times in history when they have approved dividing Kurdistan among some neighbouring countries. Without asking for the Kurdish people's agreement or approval, by the end of 2014 it has been 500 years since the first division of Kurdistan territory occurred, which occurred in 1514. The question to be asked, however, is that has not the time arrived yet for the Kurdish nation to be compensated and supported to have its own say in the international community as the biggest stateless nation in the world. My deep appreciation for paying attention and for listening to me today. Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much for those words and for drawing our attention yet again to the atrocious murder of Dr. Sharafkandi 20 years ago today, and of the ongoing violations of human rights that are committed in Iranian Kurdistan, and for calling on the international community to do something positive to counter these appalling atrocities, because not only are Kurdish human rights activists imprisoned, but as you know, they're extrajudicially murdered by the regime. And I think it is up to us to involve particularly the UN special procedures, such as the UN Rapporteur on extrajudicial executions, the UN Rapporteur on torture, the Working Group on arbitrary detention, the Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers. All these procedures should be invoked to counter the oppression of the Kurdish people in Iranian Kurdistan, and to highlight the atrocities that are constantly being committed against them. So we're very grateful to you for your remarks and for bringing us back to the duties of the international community in this regard. Now I have great pleasure in asking our second speaker to address us. She is Roya Hakakian, a writer and journalist. She works in both film and print, been on CBS 60 Minutes, ABC, documentary specials. She's the author of numerous works, including Journey from the Land of No, A Girlhood Caught in Revolutionary Iran, and her new book, The Assassins of the Turquoise Palace, which made several lists for the best of 2011. She was born and raised in Tehran, and she came to the United States in May 1985 as a refugee. I have great pleasure in asking her to speak to us.
Thank you for this honor. There are far more qualified people to talk about the plight of the Kurds and also the assassinations at the Mykonos restaurant. The only thing that I think I can add to this conversation is trying to inject this whole story, which in a way is ongoing, for one thing, because the case continues to be open, and it's not a closed case, because the chief assassin at the restaurant was never brought to justice, but also because it's among the only serious blows that the international community has ever been able to deliver to Iran in the most peaceful way. I was interested in the story primarily at the very beginning because I had a fabulous muse, the gentleman sitting over there who survived the assassination himself. He, like a Scheherazade, a human Scheherazade, he told me one installment after another, and I unfortunately got hooked because he's a fabulous storyteller. So from a writer's perspective, it seemed to have all the elements of a great crime story. It had evil people and good people, and at the end of the day, it amounted to an unprecedented and incredible story of David against Goliath, that little people with very little power managed to overcome the highest odds. But what makes this the exceptional historic example that I believe that it continues to be is the fact that it simply did what the Europeans knew how to do best. It gave the victims justice. And by giving those victims a sense of justice, this case turned out to be the one different case in the whole history of continued assassinations throughout Europe. This, as most attendees here are aware, was not the only case of assassination, but it is the only one that truly got justice. And in the end, within the judgment that was issued from the court in April of 1997, the highest Iranian leadership, those who continue to be in power, were named. And that's something that has not happened since the Nuremberg trials, since the trials in Germany after World War II. So not only this was a great success for the human rights community, but it was also the only example of these victims having received justice. And also what continues to be a staggering consequence of this that continues to reverberate is that the international community did intervene in Iran, but without military might. Without dropping a bomb, and with the EU really cutting off all ties, diplomatic ties with Iran, it shook the regime in such a way that a wholly new government came to power thereafter. You may remember that the June of 1997 was also the year of a presidential election. And that was almost 2 months after the judgment from Mykonos had been issued. And something incredible happened during that presidential election, which was the rise of President Khatami. Khatami was lagging in the polls in the March of 1997, but by June he had caught up and he rose to power. Perhaps one of the ways in which the international community helped that sudden rise was by the EU cutting its ties with Iran, by the international community demanding in its own way for Iran to put a new face forward. And for better or for worse, even though that the reform movement in Iran has not been successful yet, but that rise and that judgment which helped that rise eventually helped the democratic forces in Iran, at least for a couple of years, to gather momentum, and it brought the dawn of what we've come to know as the dawn of the reform movement or the reform era in Iran. These are the ways in which the international community is seeking for ways to influence the democratic movement in Iran, and I can point to the example of Mykonos as the most successful example of such influences in the last 30 years. That case is open. The case in Austria of the murder of Dr. Qassemlu is still open. And I hope by pursuing these causes of justice, the international community can continue to pressure Iran, but also restore a sense of dignity and bring justice to the victims who are still reeling from these assassinations. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much for your important words. As you say, the case of Dr. Qassemlu is still open. The Austrian files on that atrocity have not yet been fully opened, and there is work still to be done. But the victims of the Mykonos atrocity did obtain partial justice, as you rightly said, and it is a lesson to the international community as to what can be achieved by peaceful means. So we need to persevere with all the levers that are at our disposal to try and ameliorate the human rights that are continuing to be flouted in Iranian Kurdistan today. Now our next speaker is someone who has personal experience because he was a survivor of the assassinations at the Mykonos restaurant. He is Parviz Dastmalchi, a leading Iranian intellectual and writer, and I have great pleasure in calling on him to address us.
Thank you to Lord Avebury. Thanks for this invitation.
اما چون ماموسا حسن زاده قبلا از جلسه از من خواستن در مورد اون شب صحبت بکنن، در نتیجه در مورد اون شب صحبت میکنم، اما به فارسی، برای اینکه انگلیسی اونقدر خوب نیست.
But because I've been asked by Mamusla, by our Kurdish representative here today to talk about that evening, this is what I'm going to do.
ما اون شب 11 نفر بودیم. 4 نفر اونور میز نشسته بودن، 4 نفر اینور میز و 1 نفرم سر میز نشسته بود. 10 دقیقه به 11 شب بود. من در حال گفتگو با دکتر شرفکندی بودم که روبروی من اون طرف نشسته بود. نفری که سمت راست من نشسته بود صحبت ما رو قطع کرد. من برگشتم به طرف ایشون که ببینم که چی میگه.
The person who was sitting across from me stopped in the middle of his sentence, and I turned around to see what was happening, what caused this sudden interruption.
دیدم که دو تا پای قوی اومد اینجا کنار من ایستاد. فکر کردم که یه نفری از دعوت شدگان هست. به همین دلیل خیلی راحت نگاه من از پایین رفت به بالا که ببینم کی اومده.
I just assumed that a new guest had arrived, but when I looked over my shoulder, I saw these two very strong legs, and I looked up and saw this man.
نگاه من که به طرف بالا میرفت دیدم یک چیزی اومد جلو صورت من در فاصله یه وجبی که مسلسل بود.
And suddenly, when I looked at his face, the next thing I realized was that the barrel of a gun was inches away from my face.
من فکر می‌کردم که روش یه دستمال بعداً معلوم شد که از درون یک ساک ورزشی تیراندازی کردن.
I thought that the barrel of the gun was hidden under a handkerchief, but then later on I realized that the machine gun was inside a bag.
همین که من نگاه هم به صورتش افتاد دیدم صورتش پوشیده است و در این هوا به طرف دکتر شرفکندی 3 تا گوله شلیک شد که پوکه ها جلو صورت من پرید بالا.
When I looked at him, I realized that his face was covered, and I saw 3 shots or 3 blanks being falling out of the machine gun, and I realized that this was a dangerous situation, and I threw myself back.
من دیگه غریزی خودم انداختم عقب زیر میزی که پشت من بود.
By the force of intuition alone, I threw myself back under the table that was behind me.
همین که من افتادم فتاح عبدالله که سمت چپ من نشسته بود اونم 1000 ثانیه افتاد همونجایی که من افتادم. اینقدر فاصله صورت به صورت داشتیم.
Less than a second after I had fallen, Fatah Abdullah, another Kurdish representative, fell right next to me.
دهنش پر خون بود و گوله به قلبش نشسته بود و آخرین نفس رو میکشید.
His mouth was full of blood and the bullet had pierced his heart and he was breathing his last breaths.
من تکون نمیخوردم. بعد از 2 رگبار مسلسل یک لحظه سکوت شد.
I wasn't moving at all, and after 2 full rounds of machine gun, there was suddenly no sound at all.
من همونطوری که افتاده بودم بدون اینکه تکون بخورم فقط این نگاه همو از زیر میز آوردم به طرف بالا اونجایی که مسلسل چی بغل دست من ایستاده بود ببینم که رفته یا نرفته.
I was completely still, but I looked up to try to see what was happening and looked at the machine gun operator who was standing right next to me.
نگاه من که اومد بالا دیدم یک دست، من فقط دست رو دیدم که به طرف دکتر شرفکندی تیر خلاص بهش میزنه.
Then I saw another hand, and I just saw the hand, the elbow, and that person holding a handgun, no longer the machine gun, was putting the coup de grace, the final shots in Dr. Sharafkandi.
و چون آستینش سیاه بود من متوجه شدم نفر دومه که این کارو میکنه.
And because the sleeve was black, I realized that this was a second person who was doing it.
تو این لحظه همایون اردلان که اونجا نشسته بود و 2 گوله خورده بود و پرت شده بود اون طرف بیهوش شده بود، به هوش میاد.
At that moment, another Kurdish leader, Humayun Erdalan, who was sitting next to Dr. Sharafkandi, had also suffered 2 shots, and suddenly he came to consciousness.
Next to Abdullah.
Next to Abdullah came to consciousness.
سرشو بلند میکنه و اینکه تیر خلاص به دکتر شرفکندی میزد به مجردی که میبینه سرشو بلند کرد رفت بالا سر اون و یه تیر خلاص هم زد تو سر اون.
The moment he lifted his head to see what was going on, the shooter with the handgun realized that he was alive and therefore put a final shot into his head.
من فکر کردم اینا به تک تک کسانی که اینجا هستن تیر خلاص میزنن. الان میاد به عبدالله هم میزنه که بغل دست من فوت کرده و بعدم میذاره اسلحه رو کلت رو شقیقه خود من.
I then assumed that the man with the handgun was going to go around and put a final shot in every single person in the room, including myself.
ولی فرار کردن و ما پا شدیم. 3 نفر در جا کشته شده بودن، دکتر شرفکندی، عبدالله و همایون اردلان.
But those 2 men escaped, and 3 of the people who had suffered bullets that night died instantly. The 3 Kurdish leaders.
نوری دهکردی هنوز زنده بود، رو میز افتاده بود، لیوان آبجو زیر صورتش بود.
Nuri Dehkordhi, who was also there and a friend of Parviz and a translator for Dr. Sharafkandi and also a friend to him, was still seated at the table. He had suffered several bullets and his face had fallen into the glass of beer that was in front of him.
تمام صورتش و تمام میز و لیوان پر خون بود و هنوز نفس میکشید.
He was still breathing, but his face and the glass of beer under his face was full of blood.
این یکی از بدترین صحنه‌ای بود که من دیدم.
This was one of the worst scenes I've ever seen.
و نوری هم 3 ساعت بعد در بیمارستان فوت.
And Nuri died in the hospital 3 hours later.
مرسی. Sir Lord Avebury, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for inviting me and providing me this opportunity to talk to you. In the next several minutes, I will try giving you my view regarding an issue that is essential for a fundamental understanding of Iran, especially when trying to shape any kind of policies or plans toward that country. The question is, does the Islamic Republic of Iran have the capacity to change or reform itself? My responses to this question are the following 5 points. First, the theocratic setup that constitutes the Islamic Republic of Iran is a new form of government that is the product of thinking of the 12 Imams Shiites who follow the doctrine of Velayat Faqih, otherwise known as the rule of jurisprudence. Ayatollah Khomeini was the theoretician and the founder of this new system. The constitution and the structure of government in the Islamic Republic of Iran are based on Ayatollah Khomeini's concept of rule of jurisprudence. According to this system, the Iranian regime considers itself the representative of God on earth so long as the 12th missing Imam or the Mahdi is absent. From this regime's viewpoint, all its standards and values are the only absolute truth which must be spread through the world in order to establish a single universal nation, Ummat Wahid Jahani. Second, I think everyone here is acquainted with the system of apartheid in South Africa, which legalized racial discrimination under the law. People there were divided into 2 classes, white and blacks. The reason I refer to the apartheid system is because in the Islamic Republic of Iran, the law divides people into 10 categories, ranging from those who have full and absolute rights, like spiritual leaders and high priests, to people whose death is sanctioned by this brand of Islam, like Baha'is. These 10 categories are as follows: Muslims and non-Muslims, non-Muslims with holy books and non-Muslims without any books, Shiite Muslims and Sunni Muslims, 12 Imam Shia and other sects, male Shia and female Shia, spiritual leaders and lay male believers, and finally those whose murder is legitimately sanctioned by Islam. The majority of this group are denied full political and particularly civil rights by law. Third, in order to understand the situation in Iran, now I am going to be more specific. Spiritual leaders, ayatollahs, fuqaha, and mujtahidan monopolize and control all of institutions and organs of government and control the decision-making process, and all of them according to the law. Now the question is, What are the consequences when government institutions become monopolized by Shiite clerics and mujtahids as far as the Iranian people are concerned? This is what happens. A. 50% of the population of Iran, namely women, and B, nearly 10 to 15 million people belonging to the religious minorities, including all Sunnis, Christian, Jewish, Baha'is, and other. C, all male followers of the system who are not mujtahid and faqih. And finally, D, all of the political parties and organizations are deprived of any legal rights to be elected to serve in the political and civic life of their country. Therefore, it follows that a vast majority of Iranian citizens neither have the legal rights to be elected nor have the rights to participate in the management of the country's key institutions. Fourth, from what I have described, and by considering the harsh policies of the Islamic Republic of Iran towards civil institutions and political parties, like banning free press, limiting activities of labor unions, suppressing workers, imprisoning of human rights activists, torturing and executing students, dissidents, and political prisoners, suppressing women movement, and pursuing international terrorism, one can conclude that Islamic Republic of Iran neither acknowledges the civil rights of its citizens nor honors its obligations and commitments to any of their international legal treaties. Fifth, and to summarize, the government of Islamic Republic of Iran neither accepts the Declaration of Human Rights nor implements the democratic principles of governing. The Islamic Republic of Iran is therefore nothing other than a new form of totalitarian regime with characteristics of a backward society rooted in Shiite culture with no capacity for any serious reform. That is why the reform movement headed by Mr. Khatami and later by Mr. Karoubi and Mousavi were unable to fulfill its goals and collapsed. Now, going back to my original question, does Islamic Republic have the capacity to reform itself by moving in the direction of a democratic system based on human rights? Let me underline that fact that Soviet Union and the former Eastern European experience has shown that any major reform in any totalitarian regimes will result in the complete collapse of those systems, and that is why the assumption that Islamic Republic of Iran can be capable of reforming itself is simply a false premise and non-starter. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that suggestion. There are two qualifications to your conclusion that the regime has no capacity for reform. The first is that there may be dissension among the senior clergy, which would result in a split between different elements in the regime. And the second is the obvious phenomenon of serious unrest amongst the people, which has been witnessed not only just recently, but at other moments in the recent past, and which indicate that the people of Iran are losing patience with the regime, and that there may be a spring in Iran, just as there has been in the Arab world. But we can discuss that later on during the course of the discussion. My next very present duty is to introduce my colleague, Jeremy Corbyn MP. Jeremy was elected as MP for Islington North in June 1983. He is Vice Chair of the Parliamentary Human Rights Group, and he's champion of just about every human rights cause in the book. I have great pleasure in asking Jeremy to address you.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for hosting this evening's meeting. And having attended memorial functions over the years in memory of Dr. Avebury, pleasure is the wrong word, but I'm pleased to be here this evening in memory of Dr. Sharafkandi and the life that he laid down for his people, along with his colleagues, Mr. Abdullah and Mr. Ardalan, because the history of the Kurdish people, ever since the end of the First World War, has been one of high hopes that have always been dashed after a very short period. One thinks of the short period of the recognition of Kurdistan at the end of the Treaty of Versailles, and one thinks of uprisings at various points where the Kurdish people have been promised a right of self-determination, which in most cases has been taken away. And it's the narrative that runs through the history of the whole region ever since the end of the First World War in Turkey, Iran, Iraq and Syria, of this belief and thirst and right of the people to speak their own language, develop their own culture and develop their own forms of government. At every turn, the leaders of those campaigns have been assassinated and large numbers of people put in prison, and the self-expression which they quite rightly demand for themselves in international law has been denied. At the end of the day, it's counterproductive for any state to behave in that way towards any minority, particularly a minority as huge and significant as the Kurdish minority within those national borders, because they know that that demand will carry on. And Iran, which has had high hopes that have been dashed so many times, such as the coup that took place in 1952, when there were high hopes for Iran, and then the suppression of the Kurdish people under the Shah, and then again the high hopes of the revolution of 1979, and once again the suppression of those high hopes very quickly by the Islamic Republic. And then at various times there have been high hopes with the reformist movement within Iran. And we're meeting here in the relative freedom of the British Parliament to be able to discuss these things. And as one who represents an inner London constituency with a significant number of Kurdish people from all parts, but mainly from Turkey, living in my constituency, I meet every day people that are reading Kurdish newspapers, watching Kurdish television, and having hopes that one day they will be able to return to the communities they've come from, be able to speak their own language, and it will happen. Of course it will happen at some point. The question is how and when, and what pressure one puts on the regimes that undertake the oppression of others. In the case of Turkey, I recall going to Diyarbakir in the 1980s when there was no right whatsoever of anyone's self-expression. The situation has dramatically changed in Turkey. It's not perfect, it's not right, there is still a great deal of oppression, there is still a great deal of suppression of those linguistic rights, but it has changed. It's changed because people stood up on it, as it's changing in other countries. And so I think we have to demand that all the governments of the region adhere to what are basic human rights. They're there in the Universal Declaration, they're there in the UN Charter, they're there in the EU, they're there in any basic tenet of international law, the right to follow your own religion, speak your own language, and respect others' right to follow their religion and speak their own language. And that is surely all that the Kurdish people are asking for. There are very few Kurdish organisations that are now calling for a universal independent state of Kurdistan that would envelop the national borders of 4 different countries. One day, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. You will know that better than me. But surely the immediate demand has to be the right to live in peace, the right to follow your own culture in peace, the right to follow your own religion in peace. And the state does not have a right, any state does not have a right to suppress that. That is what Dr. Sharafkandi died trying to defend. That's what his colleagues died trying to defend, and that is why Dr. Zemlou was assassinated at that time. So we meet here in relative freedom, and the fact that we can meet in relative freedom is because many people fought for centuries in this country for that right of community self-expression, that right of religious freedom, and that's a right that I want for everyone all around the world, and that's what unites us here today. Thank you very much for your
and in particular for the Kurds and for the many other minorities in your own constituency, which I'm very well aware, having come across many other causes in which you've been so active. Now our final speaker is Dr. Alireza Norizadeh, who is an Iranian scholar, journalist, literary figure, and an expert on Iranian contemporary history. I should say an ultimate speaker, because we have one more after. Dr. Norizadeh.
Your Lordship, Right Honourable Jeremy, my distinguished friends and colleagues, after what I heard from Parviz, which I heard in full many times, especially one night in Berlin, where I went to cover President Khatami's state visit, and I end up with Parviz sitting together, drinking and crying and talking and just trying to find out the effect of that horrible night in Parviz's personal life, his relation with his daughter, with his mother, with his friends, and it was really the night which I never forget. And I would like just to, well, I loved Qasemlou and Sharafkandi, and Mamusta knows the way my feeling towards the Kurds, and I've been with them, I'm committed to their cause, and I'm one of the Farsi-speaking journalists and commentators who always defends the right of minorities in Iran for self-determination and for their culture, languages to be protected rather than fight with them. I just want to give you a little bit background about the killers, about this system, this criminal system which sent killers abroad as well as killing the dissident and writers, intellectual inside Iran. I just want to give you an inside information. I wrote 4 books on chain killing of intelligent and dissident in Persian. I wrote many articles in Arabic in order to explain to them. You know, there are regimes like Assad regime. They killed many of their dissidents. His father sent killers to kill Salah Beitar, other distinguished bassists and writers in Paris, in other countries. But there is no regime in the world that considering killing of a dissident as a holy war, as something holy, as something which gets you closer to heaven. And this is the Iranian regime. And we have 2 kinds of killers. We have killers who are committed, killers who believe Khomeini or Khamenei are really messengers of the God, or they are one way or the other connected to the 12th disappeared Imam of Shia, and they are their deputy on earth. So whatever they say should be carried out without even simple question. We have these kind of killers in Dr. Qasemlou and Dr. Sharafkandi's case. Whether they were Lebanese or Iranian, I mean, Rahel, Hamadi, all of them, they were committed to this idea of Velayat Faqih and Velayat Amr, and whatever they say, you have to obey. So when they killed Qasemlou, when they killed Sharafkandi, They were carrying out the instruction by their imam, and that was a holy war. What they were doing was such a great things in the eyes of the God. The God which was for us the most merciful, for them is the God who is ordering you to kill your enemy. So that God is not merciful. We have another kind of killers, like Akbar Khoshkushk, who killed Feridun Farrokhzad, the Iranian singer and artist. They are mercenary. They kill for the Mercedes. They kill for an apartment. And they enjoy killing because they are criminals. Those who killed Dr. Shapur Bakhtiyar, they robbed his watch. And that shows you they are not soldiers of holy war. They killed him and they went back to Iran. One of them ended up with a truck and an apartment, and the other one disappeared. Maybe they killed him. So therefore you have two kinds of killers. Those who took Muhammad Mukhtari, my friend, the writer, and killed him, or Muhammad Jafar Puyande, another friend of mine and translator. They were, as I read their confession, especially Mr. Kazemi Mousavi Nejad, they were doing it because the Minister of Intelligence and Security justified that by two edicts. And the way they get the edict, they go to an Ayatollah, and a stupid Ayatollah, and tell him, oh, what the religions say about a guy who insulting Prophet Muhammad or Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, like what we are watching now these days. And the Ayatollah say, of course, this man or woman, they should be eliminated. So they use that bits, and then you see in their newspaper, they start to write verses, small news about, for instance, Mr. Dariush Furuhar, the leader of Iranian People Party, who was badly butchered with his wife Parvane. Furuhar, in one of his speech 10 years ago, said something which was insult to Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. So then they put this statement, this edict, and give it to the man who has to carry the crimes. Ayatollah so-and-so, and in the case of chain killing of dissident in Iran, two Ayatollah, Khoshvakht, whose daughter married one of Khamenei's son, and another Ayatollah, who is Muhammad Taqi Misbah Yazdi, they were the one who issued the edict. For the Kurds, because they were Sunni, so whoever carried that atrocity, that crimes, so he was going direct to heaven, because they killed two Omaris, two person who praise Omar, who love Omar. And Omar, to their eyes, is, again, a criminal who prevented Ali to become the Khalifa. So therefore, we are, as I said, you should always consider you are not dealing with the ordinary killers. You are dealing with either committed killers or with mercenary and criminals. And when I studied the background of some of these killers, I found out some of them were butchers, and some of them had files, black files before revolution, knifing people in the street and attacking them. So the guys who was Mr. Darabi, who was involved in killing of Dr. Sharafkandi, he was a man in Germany. I mean, we studied about him. Parviz wrote about him, and I read the report from the court. So this person, if you look at his background, you find out that the element of crimes is within him. Once he is attacking the student, and then he goes back to Iran receiving some training. And these are and then you have Rahel, for instance, a committed Hezbollahi who is ready to kill for Wali Faqih. This regime is not a religious regime. They don't believe in religion. They pretend to believe in religion. But when 100,000 Muslim Chechenys are killed, 24,000 Syrian Muslims are killed, Ayatollah Khamenei justified that, and Ayatollah Khamenei support Bashar Assad, sent him guns, sent him weapons, sent him mercenaries, sent him Revolutionary Guards, based on what commander of Revolutionary Guards said the day before yesterday. He confessed that we have forces in Syria. Syrian people are Muslim. So therefore, do not consider Iranian regime as a regime who believe in God. They believe in nothing, just power, money, and atrocity against their own people. And this is the shortest way to describe this regime. Thank you.
It's virtually incomprehensible to most people in this country that anybody could be brainwashed in the way that you've described into carrying out these atrocious crimes. And particularly when we look back 20 years to the killing of Dr. Sharafkandi, and we remember how that crime was organized from the highest levels by Ali Falahian, the then head of security. It is a wicked regime, there's no doubt at all. And we must do everything that we can to procure the changes that our previous speaker thought were virtually impossible whilst the rule of Vilayat-e-Faqih persists. But now I have great pleasure in calling on our final speaker, Golaleh Sharafkandi, who is a member of the leading committee of Kurdistan Democratic Party.
To all of you attending this event commemorating Dr. Sharafkandi's assassination, Dr. Sharafkandi and his colleagues and friends' assassination in Berlin on September 17, 1992. Let me make two corrections before continuing with my speech. First of all, I think there was a kind of misunderstanding regarding the last sentence of Mr. Hassan Zadeh's speech being translated in English. Just I read the last sentence to get sure that the words have been understood correctly. The question to be asked, however, is that has not the time arrived yet for the Kurdish nation to be compensated and supported to have its own say in the international community as the biggest stateless nation in the world? This is the first one. And the second explanation is that Mr. Hassan Zadeh is a well-known, famous Kurdish political figure, and he has devoted more than 50 years of his life to in the Kurdish political scene and to this struggle. So, with saying all of this, I move on to my talk, or my speech, my short speech actually. I'm honored to be here with you talking about 20th anniversary. But it is not only about paying respect to those who have been murdered in Mykonos, but it is about something more than this. It is about international terrorism and the governments that support the international terrorism. Dr. Sharafkandi and his colleagues were killed during the 19th Congress of the Socialist International in Berlin. So this was not only a crime being committed against Kurdish population or Iranian people, this is a crime being committed against the international community and even the socialist internationals, because it happened both in Europe and during the 19th Congress of Socialist International. But what happened after the assassination? The most important thing that we need to refer and talk about and focus is the verdict being announced on April 10th, 1997. What happened? Iranian authorities, for the first time, have been announced to be behind the assassination, ordering and making the situation ready and prepared for the assassination to occur. After this, we witnessed that there is one important element in Germany, the independence of judiciary system, which made it happen. So the government could not interfere because, all of you know that Mr. Fallahian, the Ministry of Intelligence, was in Germany meeting Schmidt-Bauer before the Kurd process began, asking them to stop the Kurd, to make it, and promise them that they are ready to do whatever the German government needs if they stop the Kurd, the process. And then, so the independence of judiciary system is one important factor in Germany. The other point, the other lesson to be learned is the harmony and solidarity among Iranian opposition group in the Kurd that made it happen, made the verdict to be announced in that way, and we have a result finally in one of the examples. So as Roya mentioned, Dr. Sharafkandi was not the only one, was not the first or even the last, but was the person, the case that could be the representative for all those who have been killed by those terrorist regime. And there are other things to be learned. But what is the most important thing, I think, is the message for the international community and what we need to raise in that 20th anniversary. It is about asking the international community to prioritize human rights over other things. Other things include the economic relations, connections with the Iranian government, plus talking about the nuclear adventures. So prioritizing human rights and show it that in reality they are committed to follow this one. And then it's short, believe me. So the final saying is that, you know what, we are living in the area of new transnationalism, talking about new culture of solidarity. So now it is not only about me being a Kurd living there. It is not only about Iranian people living there in that region. So it is their problem. We are connected. Our lives are connected, both here in Europe, in the States, and even in the Middle East. So this world is a different world. My safety there is your safety here in Europe, in European countries, for European governments. So when we talk, when we ask the international community, it is not only about our destiny, but it is about a better situation even in Europe, even in the international community. When we ask for support, for how can I say, unified and harmonic position by the international community, we need to show the Iranian regime, the authorities, that we are serious, we are clear, and we want something. And asking for this thing, I believe that the economic sanction has proven not to be as effective that the international community was expecting. So the only thing to be done, I believe, as Mr. Hassan Zadeh referred to, is a combination of political sanction plus if there is economic sanction. But the most important one is the political sanction. So the Iranian authorities know that they cannot commit crimes without being punished, followed, or there are consequences for this. Thank you very much.